Hi, welcome to Silent Generation. I'm Joseph.
I'm Nathan.
And this week's episode topic is jewelry, specifically men's jewelry. I don't know. I feel like we were doing a lot of like urbanist and music stuff recently, so I want to do something fashiony, but I didn't want to get too specific.
Yeah. And so this topic, I think, can seem a little bit frivolous because jewelry is so kind of pointless, but it's kind of also the only thing that matters along with art because, across like the archaeological record, we lose a lot of artifacts that aren't made of durable materials. And so for precious metals, their biggest quality is their anti-corrosive properties. So like jewelry is very important. We're not going to be talking though about jewelry in the archaeological sense across the anthropological record on this week's episode though. We're going to be talking about men's jewelry in like American Western culture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just like, it is just one of those constants, I guess, to touch on the history stuff lightly at first, but like they always say like bodily adornment is one of those cultural constants. Like people always want to decorate themselves in some way.
Yeah.
And I feel like, clothing feels fleeting because it deteriorates so easily. So we don't know much about it. And so like, our understanding of the past is just based on their jewelry and stuff, the harder things. But also like it does feel closer to you in a sense, like even though clothes are directly on your body as well, like there's something about like, I don't know, when I wear jewelry and stuff, like I'll like get home from work and I'll change into something else, but I'm still in the same jewelry. Like it feels closer to you.
Are you the type of person to sleep with like rings on and stuff?
No, I take those off, shower with, and I take rings off. Yeah. And even like putting in hair products, I'll take off my rings. It's just the idea of that stuff like getting under there and all that. I probably don't wash my rings enough. But yeah.
Do you remember in like the early 2010s where there'd be mostly girls who would have like 50 or 100 like
permanent
100 bracelets on each hand?
Oh yeah, like from past concerts and stuff. Like people would do that, and they just leave them on.
Yeah, I'd meet girls like that, and I'd be like, "Do you take those off at night?" And they'd be like, "No, it's too much work. I sleep with them on." But then I'd hear stories about them where they fall asleep and they'd wake up with their hands asleep, and like, it was almost like a medical problem because they hadn't been getting blood to their hands.
Yeah.
And then that was how they learned their lesson, and then they stopped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Like anything textile, don't be keeping that on your wrist for too long. Like woven bracelets, that just
friendship bracelets.
Yeah, that just sounds a little. Oh, yeah. I guess it has like the plastic beads on it. But yeah, what's the Taylor Swift bracelet thing? Do you know about that?
I don't.
They wear like little arts and crafts bracelets. I don't know. It just goes into my like very boring spiel about how like Taylor Swift is a modern religion. People have said this as well, but like the points that are too on the nose about it is that like they wear like the sacred vestments when they go to commune with her at the concerts and stuff, like, and down to having like special jewelry to connote it as well is kind of crazy.
Yeah, a good word for that I use is ulterior religion.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that.
But yeah, Taylor Swift is really big. I think I told you the story how last summer she was doing a concert and I walked past DePaul's campus coincidentally, and there were people middle of the day like just doing choreographed routines, like hundreds of people, and there are also hundreds of people watching. And I did not, I'm not from that world. I don't know. It was kind of surprising to see that like Taylor Swift was that famous, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just so like, quasi-religious. I think it's the people crying is what really gets me. They're like being overcome by emotion. That kind of scares me.
Yeah, you're coming into contact with the sacred.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of jealous. Like, I don't know. I've never had that kind of religious fervor with Judaism. And I'm like, man, they're getting it from like some girl that grew up on a Christmas tree farm with a stockbroker father.
Yeah, I mean, the closest I guess I had to that was one time I met Marianne Williamson.
That's the closest to your religious experience.
Yeah.
I'm picturing her like you looking at her and there's like a halo around her divinity.
No, because this was back, earlier in the primary before Joe Biden was officially coronated as being the one and only candidate. But I was hoping that, she would rise in the polls and be someone I got to vote for in the primaries. She was still on the ballot, but there was no chance of her becoming president by the time Illinois had its primary this year. Yeah. But no, I went to one of her like early campaign rallies for 2024. And yeah, she was there. She met everyone that walked through the door. And yeah, it was weird. It was like I walked and then there was this woman who felt like a religious figure wearing this like pristine suit. Wow. Yeah. But yeah, to get back on topic though. So we're going to go through the different types of men's jewelry first and then talk about their form and function. We're going to start out with rings. And so I think that men's rings are as basic as can be. They're really just simple bands made out of gold or silver. There's little to no customization from one man's wedding ring to the next, other than maybe like inscriptions. Yes, there are other things that they can do, but it's really generally like men's rings are pretty simple.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe this is peaked and past, but there was like the non-traditional wedding ring, wedding band thing. I'm sure you probably saw bits of that where it's like, oh, it's made out of like wood, fossilized mammoth things. One of my friends had like one that has like a little gear on it, so it like turns and spins independently. Yeah. And that's just like, you gotta know that's a fad. Like, how would that not be a fad? Like, I guess people who wear that are probably just okay with fads, but like things are always going to regress towards the mean of just like a nice, simple band.
But like, how often do you see things like that? How often do you notice someone else's wedding ring? I feel like I don't think that would look as dated as other things. Like, I guess it's a trend in the jewelry industry, but like people aren't thinking about men's jewelry like ever. So
yeah. I guess that's true. Maybe it's just being friends with like engineers and stuff from college. Like everyone wanted to go for a like non-traditional ring, I guess, in some way. Something. Also think it's men looking for something more masculine than just wearing a precious metal. Like, oh, this one has a gear on it. That's masculine and kind of steampunk.
I think gold and silver are masculine.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think it's like simple is good.
Yeah. I have a brother-in-law who has, he is what's like imitation Damascus steel. Do you know about Damascus steel?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For listeners who don't know, there was this metallurgical process, I think in Assyria, or it was produced by the Hittites, something like that. But it basically, like, they'd create this quote unquote steel that had what looked like a liquid like rivers effect across the surface. There must have been water in the process, but the actual metallurgical process is unknown to us in the modern day, but it can be imitated. Yeah. And so my brother-in-law, he has his wedding ring as Damascus steel. Yeah.
No, people love that stuff. I would see it like back when I was more into guns and stuff. People would get like Damascus steel lowers, which is like the lower part of a AR-15 or something. But yeah, people would like get guns done in that style. It just, it seems very like, it's a twist on something, you know? Yeah. People like it.
And then if they're not wearing a wedding ring, the different fingers on men's hands have different meanings if a ring is placed on them traditionally. And so the Gentleman's Gazette has a good video on this. We'll link it in the show notes. I don't actually watch him, but it seems like you do and you have an opinion on him.
Yeah, Gentleman's Gazette is interesting. I'm pretty sure they were formed out of a like online forum called like Fedora Talk or something related to like literally the word fedora. Yeah. So grain of salt with all their stuff, because it is like they're very into like classic menswear and the golden era of menswear, as people talk about, which is like 1910s to 1960s. But so they have a lot of like very like, here are the rules, all that kind of stuff. They're a good repository for that. And they say like, oh, once you learn the rules, you can, you know, experiment within them. They've actually started selling things as well. They have a brand called Fort Belvedere. And some of their stuff actually does look pretty cool, but it's just so anachronistic to wear like modern days. Like they have videos and episodes on like evening dress and like all morning dress and all these like obscure dress codes from the past. Some of their videos are with, I don't know, they have the lead guy Sven, who's like this German guy who lives in Minnesota and is like formerly Eurotrash. He shows like old photos of himself, but now he's like always dressed in a 3-piece
like
suit.
Fake
with
like tan, gel and hair.
Yeah. Like kind of like Armani Exchange t-shirt, that kind of stuff. But he's very recovered from that. And they have other people in the videos who are a little more like, there was one guy who's like, his thing was like movie style, like 1950s and 60s. Like here's the jacket that Steve McQueen wore. Like, so he wouldn't be in a tweed suit or anything. But yeah, they have good information. It's a little pretty cringe sometimes.
Yeah, it is printed and it is presented in a bit of like an incel way, I think.
Incel way. I think it's a lot of like middle-aged dad stuff. I think it's like a middle-aged dad who's been wearing cargo pants his whole life, and then he's like, I'm now going to dress like a Victorian dandy. I think it's a bit of that.
Yeah, I can see it. But yeah, they did bring up interesting things in the video. Like, you know, he mentions that pinky rings are associated with criminals. Yeah. But I read somewhere else that like pinky rings were in general worn by people to signal that they didn't work with their hands, because it wasn't as functional if you did work with your hands to wear one.
I read that there, and I don't know that I am wearing a pinky ring right now, and it doesn't feel as obtrusive as an index finger ring. That feels like the most annoying thing.
Yeah.
I have a ring that I can fit on either my middle or my index, and like you don't realize how many metal things you touch, like just the door handle of my apartment and stuff, and you just have metal on metal, and that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But yeah, from my understanding, pinky rings, like it's a very recent association, like 70s, 80s mobster movies onwards of pinky rings being like that. As I mentioned, almost every episode I'm watching Mad Men, and they do a really good job most of the time with like the costuming and stuff. And one thing they'll have is that like they have kind of these standard characters who kind of cycle out of, you know, the show is about an advertising agency. So they'll have clients in, and he's like a guy who works for Campbell's Soup or something. And so the kind of job for the costumer is like, all right, make the most typical mid-century businessman of a respected brand. And these guys are often wearing like pinky rings or something. And so, yeah, they were like a respected thing to wear. I know there's one finger is more associated with your group membership. Maybe it is one of the pinkies actually, but yeah, that's where people would wear like Masonic Lodge rings and stuff, fraternity rings.
Yeah.
I have a ring with my initials on it that I found online. It's like a sterling silver ring. Just already had my initials engraved in it, so I bought it, and it fits on my ring fingers. So I wear it on my right, so that people don't think that I'm married. But that doesn't always work. I was like at a bar with friends, and some woman just like pointed at me like, "You're European." And she's like, because you're wearing your wedding ring on your right hand. And I'm like, oh, so people would like, instead of assuming that I'm unmarried, people will assume that I'm still married, but I'm just European. I'm like, no, I'm a single American man. I am not a married Polish man.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I think the fact that it's like kind of a signet style ring, like it's not the same thickness all around, I thought that would give it away too. But obviously I'm just like misinterpreting, I would say. So I've thought about getting it resized to a different finger to stop confusion.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't wear rings at all. I actually feel like pretty much any adornment on my body. Like I don't like wearing extra clothes. I love jackets. I do wear clothing, obviously, but no, it's just something, I guess, about the thought of having a ring on my hand. It just is so distracting. It's like that and nail polish too.
Oh yeah.
Like it's like, I don't really get why guys want to wear nail polish, because it just feels like you are weighed down and you feel less like tactile.
No,
Yeah.
It feels like something that like something we got away with as guys. They're like, nice, we don't have to wear makeup or do nail polish. And then some guys are like, actually, we'll sign up for this inconvenience. I'm like, okay, good on you. But, yeah, I think that's more of a like display of I don't do physical labor, is getting your like nails painted and stuff. That just because that'll go to shit instantly.
Having nails in general, like at the library, like I'll help people use the scanner, because we have scanners at every branch, and women who have like long nails that are highly manicured, they can't even just touch a touch screen.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine how much this is interfering with their daily life, and I can see them get frustrated.
Yeah.
But like they created that inconvenience.
Yeah. This is something we talked about, I'm trying to think last time, but like the inconvenience is the point.
Yeah.
You know, like that's like the goal.
It's the signal that you're like,
that you don't have to do these things.
It's like, this is almost on like a subconscious level, but I've realized pretty recently within the last year, I was thinking about like girls in my middle school, like why was it that they like walked so slowly? Like why was it that the most feminine girls moved so slowly? And I realized that this is probably operating on a subconscious level, but they, in an act of schismogenesis, were like, they were signaling their femininity because boys were active. They were the ones jumping around, screaming, doing things.
Yeah.
And this is something I never noticed because I am gay and I don't pay attention to women. But yeah, I think it holds true. And so I guess for women to have long nails, it also is signaling that like, you know, the lack of activity can be construed as feminine.
I think that like the Chinese bound feet thing is like such a, like Americans' perception of it. We're like, that's crazy. That shows how different and crazy their culture is. And it's like, think about it. The bound foot practice was from like the late 1800s, and it was like petering out in the beginning of the 1900s. Like what was the Western world up to in the 1800s? We were stuffing women into corsets and stuff. Like we were doing the same thing. Like the point is like, we kind of want to make like, women more encumbered to show that like they don't have to do physical labor and stuff. But yeah, any more stuff on rings?
Anything you have to bring up about your rings?
Yeah, so I bought a blazer with the gold buttons recently, and I was like, oh, I don't own any gold. I should maybe buy a watch for myself that's gold. And then I was like, oh, when I have a gold watch, like I can't wear my silver rings, and now I have to buy some gold rings. So I'm wearing my gold stuff today, and I have a ring with a single diamond in it because that's my birthstone. I feel like these are some kind of spiritually gay type of things to have. Like, here's my birthstone. This has my initials on it. It's like that kind of, but I think that there is, from what I've read, like a pretty strong history of guys having, I don't want to like shout my personality or my background from like the rooftops, but I think that like within regular menswear, there's little opportunities to like have a little twist on something to personalize it lightly. I think men should take those up, you know? A lot of them are just for you, like stuff that other people aren't going to notice.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think that the rings you wear, they do make you look a lot more mature. Yeah. Like just in terms of my friends, I feel like you're like actually a man. Like you actually like have this like maturity where I feel like you just have this like aura of responsibility. That's
why people hand me the check when we're at a table. That's why it happens.
Yeah.
That and the vicious eye contact I make with people. But I guess we can get into the next area, which is like cufflinks. And so this is, I guess we'll kind of talk about a whole category of like, just like tailoring, fastening type of pieces. And so like regular dress shirt cuffs, if you picture something you just walk into, buy a dress shirt and you get, those are called barrel cuffs actually. Where like kind of like the barrel of a gun where like, you know, it's just a complete circle. But that wasn't the first type of, that's like the newer, more recent type of cuff. Like French cuffs are the original. And so these are, the cuff part of them are double as long, and then you fold them back and you fasten them with a cuff link. And I don't really wear these. They seem too formal for most things nowadays. And also like in the kind of Ivy style, like that I like, and like the photos that I see, like it is mostly just barrel cuffs. Because in Ivy, like you kind of just take the more casual version of each formal thing. Yeah. So if there's two types of cuffs, you're going to take the more casual one. Like with jacket pockets, a patch pocket is more casual. So a lot more Ivy jackets are patch pocketed. Like I just like the more casual version of a formal thing.
Yeah. I didn't know what cufflinks were until a few years ago. Mm-hmm. I guess what like really solidified them for me, or I guess the first pair I've ever seen in my life, it was in the like Fran Lebowitz HBO documentary. She was showing off some like cufflinks she had. They were like brass spirals that she said were handmade by a friend. But yeah, I'm not really familiar with them. I do think that like they are Lindy. Yeah. They seem to be, I mean, of the types of jewelry we have listed here, they seem to be the most exclusive to men, I think.
Yeah. That's why it's so like very cool that Fran wears them off, but she just has that like swag to pull it off. Yeah. Oh, one thing I should say about like why they're more formal is like, so when you fold over a French cuff, you don't see like the seams of them. With a barrel cuff, you do see like where the cuff is attached to the shirt. Yeah. And with formality versus casualness in dress, like the less seams you see, like the more formal it is. So even down to like shoes, like a cap toe leather dress shoe is a more casual shoe as opposed to one that's like unadorned. Yeah. Like, and you just kind of see that across like men's tailoring and stuff. Like things just get more and more seamless, and like single button jackets are more formal than like double button. When it comes to like tuxedos and stuff, it's a simplification of things. I always thought that was really cool. Like in your day-to-day stuff, the things you wear are more practical, more rugged. There's more instances of like something being stitched over something, or a second layer, or like with the cap toe, that is something to give away. That is like an extra layer of leather to protect the most worn part of a shoe, which is like the outside of a shoe, which is the toe. Yeah. But like the finer things are always like, you're not going to wear this all the time. It doesn't need to be the most durable thing. It's a special occasion. Yeah. And then another, like in this category of things that you wear when you're in like dress shirts, suits, ties, all that, is like there's tie pins, which is like a single pin that'll pin your tie in place on your shirt. I've never worn one of those. I don't really like damaging my ties like that, but you added this to the docket. What's your experience with these?
I haven't had experience with them. I just learned about them through researching this for the episode. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think Gentleman's Gazette has videos on this as well. But basically, yeah, they are very old world. I feel like very old school. Yeah. But yeah, they are basically just a little jewel that you get to pin into the tie. Mm-hmm. I've never seen. I'm just outside of this. I actually have been to several galas in my life. Like I went to the Art Institute's 150th gala, and I went to the library's gala a couple of times. I've been to other galas for this art foundation I work for. So I've been to several galas in my life, but I don't even feel like I've noticed this on people when they're dressed to the nines.
This stuff, like specifically like tie pins, collar bars, which is like a piece of metal that goes from each point of the collar to keep it in place. That is like pre-golden age of menswear. That's stuff that if you wore that in the 20s, people would be like, oh, you're a little old school. So that's where you get into like historical reenactment, basically. Tie clips are the one thing I would say that have survived.
I feel like I saw you wear them to a Christmas party, right?
A tie clip? No, I don't own one.
Okay, you don't? Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what maybe you saw. But those are actually, I think, more common now than they would have been in like the 50s and 60s, because when you wear a jacket, like the problem a tie clip solves is that your tie will float forward when you lean over.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to go wash your hands, your tie is going to like fall up in the sink. If you're wearing a suit jacket though, and you're standing up, then your button should be buttoned and that'll hold your tie back. But now like people are more comfortable taking off their jackets at like formal occasions and stuff. So if you've ever been to a wedding in America after 8 p.m., like no one's wearing a jacket and everyone's like tie around the head like on the dance floor. But yeah, and so the tie bar like solves that and holds it back. But yeah, I don't know. I like to keep my jacket on as long as possible. But that like I was at a wedding and I was like on the dance floor and I was dancing. I was in my jacket. And then like some really drunk guy was just like, you still got your jacket on? You got to take your jacket off, man. And I was like, I don't like that.
Were you getting sweaty?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I hate sweating.
Yeah. I do get that about jackets. Like they're often made of wool, like people start sweating, but I just don't really sweat a lot.
Yeah.
This might be an insane take and we can take this out, but I think I can make myself sweat less. I think mentally, like those monks who can raise their body temperature or lower it. I think I can do that.
If you're not stressed out, when I get stressed out, I sweat. Like I think everyone does. So if you're just like more chill, then maybe you can avoid that.
And they say that sweat smells different and worse. Fear sweat versus just like exertion sweat. Yeah. And that's why I think I probably smell the worst after rugby, because that is both fear and exertion sweat.
Yeah. And then another jewelry piece that men like to wear are watches. So you wrote something about watch sizes over time. Yeah.
So this is kind of like we had talked about men's pants rise in the past, where like, they were just consistently at the natural waist for the entire 1900s. And then just randomly in the 2000s, everything went low rise and that was the standard. And then we just think of that as normal. Same thing with watch sizes. Like, so the first wristwatches were actually pocket watches that they just had these like custom leather straps for, and you could strap them to your wrist. And so they were seen as too casual at first. Like they were very showy. They were actually, when they first emerged, they were seen as gay. Was the one thing. I didn't put this in the docket, but there's like this article I read from like the early 1900s, and it's just like some men can be seen about strapping their pocket watches to their wrist. Let's just say it's popular in the tight trousers crowd, which is like one of the sideways ways to talk about gay men, which is also wild that that's so consistent to now that like you could probably use that phrase nowadays and people would understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were just seen as like garish and showy. Like, why would a gentleman show off his watch? It should be inside your waistcoat. But after watches hopped to the wrist, they instantly became a lot smaller. So like if you handle any like really vintage watches, especially from like 30s and 40s, like they would be women's watches nowadays. And so the size I usually wear is 38 millimeters. And I think that's pretty good. But I saw a 36 millimeter watch that I really liked. But if you walk into like a Diesel or a Fossil, you buy a fashion watch. Fashion watch is what people like derogatorily call watches not made by real like watch houses. They're going to be like 44, 45, maybe 48.
Even bigger.
Something huge. Yeah. And this all sounds like millimeters, but like you notice it in terms of the space it takes up on someone's wrist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You don't wear watches.
I don't wear anything.
Yeah.
I mean, as I mentioned before with like rings and everything, I do think I am missing a big opportunity to dress well. I really have not really thought about fashion like, basically since college in a way. I mean, I do dress better than most people still, but just, I've had this like biomechanical problem with my body where I have to think about the symmetry of my muscles all the time.
I don't think you do.
No, I do. When I'm walking and stuff, it's like I am thinking about my muscle groups. And so I'm focused on that. If there's something on my hand, on my neck, no, okay, I'm already thinking about the rest of my body. I shouldn't have to think when I walk, but I do. I won't go into this too much more, but yeah, that's why. But no, I'm missing this big opportunity because like basically when it's summers in Chicago, like you can wear a shirt and shorts and that's it. Like your belt, your watch, jewelry, those are the only other things that you can like accessorize. It's just so much more limited. I think it's so much easier for me to dress well in the winter because I can rely on like jackets and layers, and that's where I create cohesion in my outfit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't, whether people like consciously realize this or not, like people are always willing to spend more on jewelry. Like we know, oh, it's made of precious things. It should cost more than, you know, shirts and clothes and all that. But it's because you wear them like every day independently. I like kind of actively think about it. Like when I buy a watch, it's maybe a little expensive. I think about how many days I'm going to wear it. You know, like I've owned some of my watches for like close to 4 years or so. I think about how many like uses I get out of it. And then it seems like a good value because like you can only wear clothes so many times before you wear them out and you cycle them out throughout the week and all that. Like, so yeah, I think it's like not only a chance to express yourself in like the warmer weather times, but it's something you can just always have. And then it feels like a better deal.
Yeah. But no, there was a period actually where I did wear watches in high school a little bit because American Apparel would sell like really, really cheap ones, dead stock ones too, that were vintage. And I'd gotten one that I liked. It was blue. But yeah, I feel like I would feel more like a man
with a watch.
if I got a watch. I don't feel like gay guys really wear them unless they're like Apple Watches. So
yeah, I can see that. I'm anti Apple Watch. I gotta say, I thought about buying a Whoop band, if you've heard of that. It doesn't have a screen on it. It's like a fitness tracker, and they have an upper arm like mount for it. So I could, if I'm at work, I'm not wearing short sleeves basically, so I could hide that under like my dress shirt basically. Because I do want to know this information. I like want to know what my heart rate's doing throughout the day. I don't think it's good for me to know it, but I want to.
Do you think your heart rate is high?
I think so. I think like the few times I have measured it, I'm like, that's a little concerning.
No, I think most of my life, my heart rate has been in like the 90s range, which isn't good.
Oh, geez, yeah. I just think that like, I don't know. I like think that I'm so healthy and stuff because I like do rugby and all that. But my fear is that if I start like tracking my like blood pressure or my heart, I'm gonna like reveal that I'm not healthy at all, and I'm like on death's door or something.
Yeah, because I mean, I exercise regularly. I have been exercising like weekly since I was 19, like multiple times a week. But yeah, I did this like test once in high school with like a PE teacher where she had the entire class like, and PE classes were bigger, so there were like 50 students probably. But she had us all like measure our heart rates and over the course of a minute. And then there were only 3 people in the normal range because my high school was so high stress. And there were kids who would get like hospitalized for stress.
Oh yeah, we had those in my school too. Yeah, no, freakouts and all that.
Yeah.
Oh God, selective enrollment high school just really turned kids into freaks.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Apple Watch is interesting because like, I don't know, like watches have just turned into this, as everything else has fallen away fashion wise for men, that like, you know, it's hard to tell yada yada who's rich, who's poor, like stealth wealth, all that bullshit. And just like the fact that millionaires just wear like poly cotton activewear t-shirts and stuff, like we're losing those signifiers, but watches have still stuck around. But then like smartwatches, like you can buy like a gold-plated Apple Watch. I haven't really seen one in person. So like Apple's like, hey, it's here. If you do wish to spend money on it, we can lux this out for you. But like, yeah, I'm sure there's like plenty of rich guys who've, I think, maybe given up on watches because they just wear the Apple Watch because it's more functional. But as I've harped on before, like, why is everything about function? Like, let the boys have some fun and do some unfunctional things.
Yeah.
And then I also noticed, my boss was showing me his Apple Watch, and you can put like the iconic faces of other watches on your Apple Watch. Like, look, I can make it look like a Rolex Daytona. And I'm like,
yeah, like skeuomorphism.
Yeah. I want to say it's simulacrum, but it's not. It's just a straight simulation.
Yeah.
But speaking of watches and simulacrum, we were talking about this in our group chat, but like, so this company Swatch, you know, they make the little like rubber swatches and all that, but they own a lot of like other real watch brands. So the Moon Watch is like this iconic Omega watch that was worn on the moon. And then so Swatch made a version that looks just like it, but it's made out of like plant plastics, like some kind of eco-friendly plastic. And they sold it for crazy cheap, and they sold out instantly everywhere. This is a watch that's usually in the thousands. You can get something that looks like it made out of plastic for $200, and then they all sold out. So people started making fake versions of that so people could buy them. So people were going on eBay and buying fake versions of a $200 plastic version of a $2,000 watch. Like, just it feels so many steps removed from the actual idea of it, which is like that we all want to own a piece of something if it did not go to the moon, it's a part of that story for it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that capitalism, I think, has conditioned consumers to think. Andy Warhol has a good quote on this, where basically, like, you can drink Coca-Cola and it's the exact same flavor that the person on TV is drinking. So like you're having the same experience as like the president and celebrities and all of the famous people you admire. But yeah, we don't have enough objects in our world that have like material origins that are like interesting or like meaningful. Instead, it's like this globalized supply chain that doesn't make objects special. But it feels like in that people were still like expecting to get the same experience, but it's not. Yeah. One thing on watch sizes, I will say that I do think that big watches, along with big belts, big sunglasses, big cars, these all imply that the men who purchase these things think of themselves as being bigger than they actually are, which does make them seem more attractive.
I think this is like a classic line that emerges between you and me, where I'm like, it's fake. Like, don't they realize it's fake? Like, just because you bought a big car doesn't mean you're a big guy. And then you're just kind of very chill about it. Like, no, it is hot. It works. Like, they pulled it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never liked anything that can be like purchased to attain characteristics. Basically, I think that everything should be like fully worked for. That's like the idea of like working out. Is like, that's the one thing you can kind of buy it in terms of having time, having a personal trainer, but like you have to actually do the work. And so that's like when there's all these jacked movie stars and people are like, oh, they're just on steroids, which is true. But like you have to do the reps for that. Like it has to still happen. Like even if you're being coached through every single thing by someone that your studio is paying for and your meals are delivered to you and all that, like at the end of the day, you still need to like hit failure. Like they've done it. They've just had a lot of the obstacles erased for it.
You know what I saw recently that was pretty crazy was I saw some pics on Instagram. It was some gay guy who had like tattooed like a 6-pack and pecs on his body. That doesn't work. It's just some sort of dysmorphia, I think.
That stuff gets like really highlighted, like the synthol injections. Like that's like where people like squirt saline solution to try and make their muscles look like bigger and stuff. And that's like, that's where people draw a line of like, that's just, you have to be so detached from reality to think that A, looks good, or B, like is the point of working out. But the whole explosion in watch size and everything size, I think, is just one of those things that I hate about the 2000s. Like it emerged in that period where like, not there hasn't been other periods of unsubtlety. I think the 2000s, we've drawn comparisons with it to like the 70s before. Of it was just like, if prior things in menswear were based on subtlety and small differences and small details, then like that was all thrown out the window. And it was more just about like garish, in your face, on the nose, graphic t-shirts that say your beliefs and stuff. So like it was just a loss of nuance, I think, in that whole period.
Yeah. And then the next item to talk about is necklaces. So we're going to talk about this a bit farther down about when men's jewelry is a red flag. But a note on necklaces. So generally the form. So men's necklaces typically have shorter chains, typically in the 18 to 22 inch range. Longer necklaces on men were typically worn in the 70s. But yeah, they're typically like pretty minimal. The only function I think that men's necklaces have is in the instance of like dog tags, which make total sense for soldiers to wear. For civilians to wear, it is just kind of ornate and fruity. But yeah,
I don't really wear any necklaces. I feel like I already by doing the ring thing, I feel like you only get so many jewelry slots. It's just, it gets greedy at some point.
Yeah. And then the final one that I want to talk about is just belt buckles. So belt buckles, along with watches, they offer the largest surface area for ornamentation. And I think I've seen some really beautiful like belt buckles with like inlays and reliefs. And there's enough room to work with that they almost kind of feel like mini canvases in a way.
Yeah. It's like, you can't really get a bigger surface comfortably on your body, but I don't think these are comfortable either. I mean, granted, I will say like these show, just to go back to my point on pants rise, like these are more comfortable to wear if you're wearing it at your natural waist.
Yeah.
Basically, like if you're wearing it lower, it's going to dig into your gut. But if you wear it higher, you can sit down and not be in pain. But I don't know about you. I'm a big fan of Antiques Roadshow on PBS. Yeah. And there was a guy who brought in this belt buckle from the 70s. It's the shape of Alaska made out of diamonds. And that's set in a rectangle that is a mastodon tusk, a fossilized mastodon tusk that's been like cut out and polished. So kind of a stone, basically. And then that is in a larger rectangular field of gold nuggets that are adhered onto there. He says he bought it for $5,700, like back in the heyday of building the pipeline. And that's just like, those periods fascinate me, like a true boom time where like just money is going around like crazy, especially to guys with like no college degree or anything. And they're just like, literally like, what can I pour my money into? And it's like this commemorative belt buckle of the excess of Alaska in the 70s.
Yeah. No, that shows how there is, I think, true craftsmanship that can still happen with belt buckles. Mm-hmm. I own one actually that my grandfather had. I'm not too sure how luxurious it is. Seems like there's turquoise in it, but it's of an eagle. But yeah, I've always just been like really impressed with the craftsmanship because it does feel handmade in the way that that Alaska one probably does. Mm-hmm. And then now we can get into like men's jewelry in the modern day. So honestly, I think I rarely see guys wearing jewelry other than say like wedding rings and watches. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is because they both have the clearest functions, you know, signaling marriage and telling the time, but also because they're the least gay men's jewelry, TBH. So yes, we've loosened up a lot since like the mid 2000s when things were like really, really heteronormative. But like, yes, you can wear shorts above the knee now, but I think this is one area that I don't think things have budged much. I think guys still feel the same way.
I think they've budged a bit for younger guys with jewelry. But even then, like, I think it's just a testament to the different genres of guys that are emerging. Like these different separate, like not that everything is talking about the dating marketplace, but there's like different genres of guys who can like do one thing and not affect others. But like, I want to think about here is like Zoomer e-boy types with like lots of rings and then like dangly necklaces and stuff, or an aesthetic that like on Infed Alumni, they've called the 70s queerbaiter, which is like a guy who'll have like a Frank Zappa mustache and like long curly hair, shirt unbuttoned to the bottom, like, and then just like lots of necklaces and stuff. And so not to say those are straight guys. Yeah. I would say, even though like, I think to like a real country guy, they'd be like, oh, clearly that guy is gay. But like, it's like, no, you haven't seen the TikToks. Actually, they're very straight and they're doing very well for themselves. So it's back in, but I don't know these people in real life. These are just things I see and get mad at on the internet. Oh,
something I guess I kind of blocked out. We haven't written about this at all, but basically mid 2000s, yes, it was very heteronormative, but there were these like weird little blips where like really gay stuff would come into come into fashion. Like the fact that you could walk out of like Abercrombie and Fitch stores with bags that had like shirtless guys like touching each other. Yeah. Another thing was the color pink. Guys started to wear that. But another again is that you started to see guys wearing like diamond earrings. Like studs. It makes me think about
Backstreet Boys kind of stuff.
Yeah, it makes me think about the have you ever seen the meme of the like I Got Court starter pack?
No, but I can imagine it.
I might be able to pull it up really quick, but it's this meme. Yeah, so I'm gonna show Joseph this meme. But yeah, it's of a guy with a goatee, neck tattoos. He's wearing formal wear, but in a very particular way. We're still wearing sneakers, but they're all black.
The gray dress shirt is really good. That is accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. Very classy, right? Yeah.
Oh man.
It was so interesting though that there were those like little blips that did happen. But yeah, to get back to it, I think that
I guess we also haven't like, I guess we should say we know like nothing about the bling side of jewelry. That's something we're not too qualified to talk on. I would say. I think we're talking about more just like average like people, not like celebrities with like gold chains and stuff like that. We're talking about like some people you see on the streets, basically.
Yeah, because I mean, growing up in Chicago, being born in the 90s and living through the 2000s, you wouldn't, I mean, the city is a third black, but I wouldn't see people walking around in gold chains like that. Yeah. That was popular, but it's popular in the way that like celebrities dyeing their hair is popular. It's not like the average person is adopting.
It doesn't trickle down
those trends.
Average people.
Yeah. But yeah, something else that's current that touches on the like, is male jewelry gay question is I think the recent popularity of pearl necklaces and earrings amongst Gen Z boys. Mm-hmm. So I can't say whether or not pearl jewelry has been more popular amongst like legitimately gay guys or straight men, because it's really hard to tell, because the most famous queerbaiter, for example, Harry Styles, he's been photographed like dozens of times wearing pearl necklaces or pearl earrings. And yeah, people I'm sure are familiar with Harry Styles, but he is one of these celebrities where like every time he's in an interview, they ask him about his sexuality and he's just like giggling and saying like, oh, well, maybe, I don't know. And it's, I think it's a bit disingenuine. I personally think he's straight.
I think he's straight. I think it's another way to flex how hot you are, is to make really bad style decisions.
He's not even hot.
I think he's perceived as such. I mean, he's incredibly desired by women. Like, and so I think you see this more with women, like when a really hot girl will get like a terrible haircut or something, and then she still gets attention. It's like, see, like, look at me, I'm still hot. I think it's much harder to do as a guy, but you can still totally do it. Like, he can get away with all this like queer baiting stuff and doing all that. It's almost like pushing the envelope of how many like ill-advised style decisions he can make and still have people fawn over him. It must feel good.
I don't know. When I look at his outfits, I think about like other artists I've seen where like occasionally I'll enter a gallery and before even reading about the work or why they made it, I can just tell they're not thinking clearly and they're not feeling well.
Unwell art.
Yeah, like when it just starts to be like mushy, or for example, there's Sarah and Joseph Belknap. I don't think they're very popular anymore, but they were like very like of the moment in like the 2000s. They made artwork that felt very like whimsical in like a hipster way. Best way to describe it. Like they made these like really beautiful sculptures where there'd be like these figures made out of plants that would bloom and then they'd decay. It was so amazing. But then I saw recent work a few years ago and it was just like smiley faces being like stabbed into a wall or something. It was just such a decline from the previous work. And it just indicated to me that like they hit some sort of block and they're not thinking anymore. But I go to galleries and I see stuff like that regularly.
Yeah. This kind of reminds me of like, you know, Modest Mouse, the band?
No.
You don't know Modest Mouse?
When there are musician names that are male coded, I'm like, I don't know.
They are pretty straight male coded, I gotta say. But the front man has like struggled with mental health his whole life. Yeah. And the albums were very, very good in the late 90s to mid 2000s. I haven't liked the recent stuff as much. And I was reading an interview with him for some music magazine about a new article. And they're like, oh, what are you going through? And he's like, well, I've been really struggling with like, you know, gang stalking and all that, you know, which is a schizophrenic thing where you think that there's like a whole organization of people out there like tasked with monitoring you and messing with you. And the interviewer is very chill about this. He's like, oh, that's as if he said something normal. He's like, oh, it's very difficult to deal with. I'm so sorry about that. And I'm just like, sometimes with artists, I'm like, do we have to wait for this to be over, for the good art to come back, for you to like get through this like period of being fascinated with gang stalking and you can get back to generating good things? Like that artist you were talking about is probably just in what's hopefully just like a low bit before they return.
But oh my gosh, you're just talking about gang stalking and explaining it like that, because I knew the word, but I just made a realization. I had a coworker once, this really out of it woman who she was like a straight edge vegan rockabilly who was Puerto Rican and really out of her mind. But yeah, she would like do stuff like I would ask her what she did over the weekend and she'd be like, oh, I went to an anti-circumcision rally. But one of the other things that was weird about her was like I'd ask her like, oh, how is it getting to work? She would tell me that she like takes different bus routes every day and leaves at different times so that people can't follow her movements. And she actually leaves like men's shoes around the house so that if someone comes in, they think a man is at home. And she like plays tape recordings of dogs barking and like all this stuff. Like she's convinced like this whole organization is like watching her when clearly nothing is. Yeah.
I don't think I've said this on the pod, but I'm always kind of jealous of the confidence that people with that have, that like they think that there's people who care about them in that way. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just so invisible to the rest of the world sometimes. I don't think I have an FBI agent like tracking my movements.
We have people listening to us now all over the world.
I don't know. I just like, it feels very self-centered to think that like there's all these people spending all this time thinking and tracking you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't think I occupy much space in people's minds.
Yeah. But yeah, back to the is jewelry gay question. Okay. So on the straight guys wearing pearl jewelry to signal that they're queer when they're not, I do think that gay guys do basically the same thing, but in like the reverse way. So this is really interesting. So as we discussed in mid-2000s prep, gay men often attempt to try to look straight and consider hypermasculinity to be the conventional standard of gay male beauty. Well, cultural trends have shifted and society at large has embraced soft boys, and straight guys feel free to experiment with like more feminine clothing. For gay guys, it's still in the same spot where like gay guys are not wearing more makeup than before. They're not like wearing pearl necklaces quite in the same way. But something they do actually is like when gay guys get jacked and they've reached this like really difficult standard of beauty to meet where like they reach that hyper masculine ideal, what I see usually is that they pierce one ear and they wear one earring, usually a dangly earring, maybe a pearl earring, just as a way to signal that they're still gay.
Yeah. Don't worry, I'm still gay. Let me give you a little, like, I might have become jacked, but don't worry. I'm still.
Yeah, I've seen this over the years a lot with like Instagram accounts for gay guys who live in NYC, which I don't follow because I don't follow thirst trap gay accounts. I am very disciplined and I'm not into that.
Yeah. No, yeah, I've never followed like the straight equivalent of that, which is, you know, quote unquote IG thoughts, that stuff. That I've always said like it feels more morally bankrupt than pornography. Like it feels worse than that stuff. And then people can just see that when they look at your following and like people from work and stuff. Yeah. Like it's just bad. I don't know, but it's there's a lot of guys who do it and power to them. But
no, I've been getting upset by the Instagram algorithm a lot lately because my Discover page has turned into mostly being car crashes. It's like they know that I just get shocked, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah. Whenever another thing I get on my For You Discover page that like upsets me is all of these like OnlyFans gays who are making content that is just borderline pornography, and just I don't need to be seeing that in the middle of the day.
No.
But yeah, it's a good thing in the sense that like it makes me not use Instagram more. I've never been actually addicted to Instagram, but it just sucks. It's like, it does make me feel like these fears that shouldn't be interacting are like, I should not be seeing stuff like this in the middle of the day.
Yeah. An ex of mine said that like she kept on, after we started dating, she somehow got in this algorithm hole on TikTok where it was like showing TikToks of girls who had like lost their boyfriends, who had like died. And so the format would be like, it would be like photos of them together. And it's like, we didn't even know this was going to happen or something. And she's like, yeah, I had to just get off of TikTok for a bit because I thought you were going to die. And I was just like, it just shows that like what the algorithm is not capable of understanding is like the algorithm, if it was a person, would be like, what? You love this stuff. You keep on clicking it. Isn't this good for you? Like, and it's just like, no, I'm reacting to it. I'm not loving it.
That is really sad. Final point on that. But yeah, I think it is interesting though that these trends appeared not quite at the same time. The gay guys wearing a dingly earring thing happened before the straight guys wearing pearl earrings and necklaces. But yeah, it's interesting that like for straight men who are obtaining a level of femininity and for gay guys who are obtaining a level of masculinity, they still have kind of done the same thing.
Yeah. You just want to grab one bit of it, basically. Like for guys, for straight guys, it looks like straight men are trying to signal like, look, I'm in touch with my feminine. Not too much, but just enough that like, you know, I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to like, you know, talk or walk over you. But I think it's that kind of aesthetic rule of like, you take a classic thing and you change one thing. And then that becomes a very like purposeful aesthetic decision. If you change 2 or 3 things, then your point kind of gets lost. So you just be a jacked, conventionally masculine guy, but then bam, one dangly earring. It's like, oh, it's a point of interest. Like you've done a twist here.
Yeah. Men's jewelry in the recent past.
So like, if we're talking about like modern men's jewelry stuff, like in the pretty recent past, like I'd say and I mentioned earlier this period that people like to mark out of the golden age of menswear. I kind of touched on this, but like men had these like very small little avenues to like men dressed more consistently when everyone wore suit and tie all the time. The most typical business suit you'd wear is just a gray flannel suit. Like that was just used as a term for like boring average man. I think the Hitchcock movie North by Northwest was originally going to be called The Man in the Gray. Wait, no, I'm wrong on this. There is a movie called The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit, and it's about like supposedly boring man, and then interesting stuff happens. So you had these little avenues, and jewelry was one of those things. You'd have cufflinks, and then you could just kind of express yourself in these small ways.
And then another trend I think has happened recently is that like, Y2K jewelry along with Y2K itself was popular, very popular for a little bit. And I feel like within the aesthetic that sunglasses are treated almost like jewelry as focal points of the outfit that are removed from function.
Yeah. So you don't wear any jewelry, but you do wear glasses every day.
Yeah. So. It's one of my few chances to.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure on those glasses. How did you choose them then?
Well, this pair, I didn't quite know I was going to pick this one, but I went into Warby Parker with Riley, and I had different pairs in mind that I wanted to look at, and I put those on, but then, we noticed this pair, and I tried it on, and I really liked it. So that's how this one happened. Mm-hmm. But I wear this pair of black glasses that has like a white band around the rim. I honestly don't want to wear glasses. I take them off for pictures, but I do wear them like every day. Too. Yeah, I step outside, they turn into sunglasses, which I think helps because when I am in rough areas, like I just feel like it's helpful that like they can't see my eyes.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I like wearing sunglasses a lot. I was told by one eye doctor that because my eyes are so light, I really need to like protect them more than other people. And that made me feel very special. I was just like, oh, I have special eyes. I must protect them from the sun. But I have like cheap sunglasses and like nice ones that I wear every so often. Yeah. But I don't know. Sunglasses indoors kind of pisses me off. I mean, hats indoors pisses me off. A lot of stuff pisses me off. But it's just stuff that I perceive as like antisocial. And I always thought it was interesting how like the reflective right wing like wraparound sunglasses have become like such a thing. Like the idea is the profile picture of someone with wraparound iridescent sunglasses sitting in a truck with a goatee or beard. Like this is just a political like figure. Yeah. Essentially. And these are people who are saying that like masks were antisocial because you're covering up your face. Like, show me your face. Stop being antisocial. Yeah. I will not show you my eyes. And well, like definitely like your mouth and your face is such an important part of social interaction. Like I'd maybe argue the eyes are more important. Like when people want to obscure identity of people, they block out their eyes, not their mouths. Like it's just I think more important.
There could be an art piece on that. I think people would find it really interesting. Yeah. Because I do think a lot of art pieces that are some of the most effective deal with like spectatorship and like you viewing the work and other people viewing it. And for this case, I think just if someone were to do a play on, that of like conservatives concealing their eyes and, liberals concealing their mouths, I feel like there's something that could be done there.
That could be a little on the nose, I think, but no.
No, it's interesting.
Yeah. And then here's a harebrained theory of mine on the reflective sunglasses. I think that like fully like immersed in it right-wing people, like their relationship with their cars is just like, it's the only way they navigate throughout the world basically. Yeah. And like there's no pedestrian life, no pedestrian spaces. Like you just go from job to your home. Like you're never on a sidewalk, you're never on a crosswalk or anything. And so you get used to that, the tinting of windows, something I've railed on in the past of just like this fuck you from the car to the outside world of like, I don't trust you. You don't trust me. You can't see what I'm doing. This is my hidden, like, I want to take up public space and hide in it, but also I have full access to it. And so you have that. And then the few times these like right wingers do emerge in a public sphere to like protest or something, like they've now lost that thing they can hide behind and exert their will. And so that's where the sunglasses come in. Like the most natural form they have is to be inside the car, and then it feels unnatural to be like naked and unprotected in the world. And so I almost think that like sometimes I think gun culture is downstream from car culture in a way that like, all right, if I'm not in my lifted truck, I feel defenseless. Like what else can I reach for? Like, oh yeah, my gun.
Also, I mean, in rural areas, you can just go to your backyard and shoot trees. Like
it's fun.
You cannot do that here. We have like, this system called like the shot spotter where like it triangulates where shootings happen and then cops show up. It's like, and I think that guns are inconvenient. Like for me, say if I were to go to say a gun store, I take it home on the CTA. No, I can't do that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not really something you can do as like an urban person.
Yeah. And I grew up around guns in like Las Vegas and Arizona. I don't know what we did in Germany. I guess we must have left them in the US. But so I've like been in gun stores and I've been to gun ranges and I've done like trap and skeet shooting. And it is like very, car focused. Like if I wanted to go to, there's no gun stores in the city of Chicago. There's one across the street actually on the Howard, like northern boundary.
In Evanston?
Lincolnwood?
Oh, okay.
I would say, yeah. So there's one literally across the street from Chicago.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, it's assumed if you're using guns and you have a car. But I don't know. I've just been really thinking about like gun culture recently because people try and paint it as like a classic conservative thing. But in my at least mental image of like mid-century and prior America, like, yeah, it was full of guns. Like, there's this one gun, like the Remington 700. And the people love like, oh, it's a great deer hunting gun. Like people say like, oh, that put like food on the table during the Great Depression. People have said that about this gun, that like, when the rest of the country was flailing, like Americans could just go out, hunt a whitetail and bring it home. I don't know if that cultural idea has much truth behind it, but like guns have been a part of rural life in America, but they haven't been the center of it.
And then one other final note on like jewelry in the modern day. So I think that tech accessories can be thought of as men's jewelry in the modern era, like Apple Watches, for example. I used to see like neck-hanging Bluetooth speakers being like proudly worn by young men all over the CTA, which are basically necklaces, but I haven't seen that much lately. But yeah, I think they've just been supplanted by AirPods. I do think the idea of like wearable tech has been run into the ground. It's lost its appeal in large part to the monopolization of the tech and audio industries. If there were more companies offering wearable technologies, there'd be cooler options that felt less ubiquitous and more like fashion. But the fact that there's only like, one main place to get AirPods and it's not stylized, it results in it just being this like functional object instead of something that could be fashion.
I think that there's always going to be, when a new form of technology is invented, there's going to be like cool, interesting, zany ones. Like when cell phones came out and there was like the Sidekick, the Razor, there was that one that like swung out like a switchblade. There was all that. And then we just settled at just a large screen with tons of cameras on the back. Yeah. And we're getting to that with wearable tech. Like there was Google Glasses. There was like this one thing you'd clip on your shirt and it would just take a photo every 30 seconds of your day. There's this right now, this like terrible AI wearable came out where it's just Siri, but it's clipped to your shirt again and you ask it stuff and it tells you. So I think there's going to be maybe a last gasp of those, but like, I don't know, we're just going to arrive at AirPods and an Apple Watch. Like the wrist is a useful place to put things. Like, I don't know. Remember Bluetooth headsets? Like a Bluetooth, like single ear, one of those, like a Jawbone. Remember these? Hands-free, single ear Bluetooth things?
I remember there being like pagers, but they would attach to your cell phone, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day. Okay,
to show that like you needed to be hands-free, you had lots of important stuff to do. As recently as 2018, my first boss had one of those in all the time, but I don't know. Some people are just like a single AirPod all the time type of person.
I don't get that.
No,
I feel like I get so zoned out by wearing them. I can't wear it all day.
No,
yeah. And then, okay, so we've talked about jewelry in the modern day. So while I can appreciate men's jewelry in the modern day, I oftentimes do like think it's a bit of a red flag in certain ways.
Yeah.
So, I've encountered a lot of guys who seem to be sort of like directionless / depressed that start to wear like pendants that allude to cultural meaning, like say Celtic knots or jade Buddhas or like a vaguely tribal pendant. They feel forced to me, like the men are grasping for meaning in their personal lives that isn't there. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like, it's a way to like kind of signal your depth and your interiority of like, I got a lot going on. I'm really thinking about a lot.
Yeah. They find these necklaces and they like think that they can symbolize this like moment in their life where they were wanting to go through some sort of change and they cling to that. But yeah, I do think that like necklaces on men that don't immediately suss me out are pretty limited, but they're like Christian crosses, Star of David dependents, and then simple gold chains. I think basically these lack the force like rich inner world signaling that the other necklaces have, because they try to convey like a single meaning or no meaning at all.
Yeah, and it's like nothing specific about you. I mean, other than the fact that you belong to a group like that. I kind of thought about this in terms of tattoos, of how like tattoos used to be very like not cerebral or deep. They were just signaling like, oh, I'm a Marine. I like, what is it? If you're a sailor and you sailed around the Point of Good Hope, then you'd get like something tattooed on your knuckle each time. Like just very like clear, concrete meanings. And now like, you know, everyone has tattoos and they're all like, oh, this is a quote my grandma would say. And so I got it tattooed in her handwriting, or this is the coordinates of our first date. Like all these like, ask me about this kind of stuff. And I half jokingly always say like, bring back stupid tattoos. But then you say that and there's the whole like kind of sticker sleeve tattoo stuff as well, where people are I think trying to bring it back in a way of like, oh, this is just a dumb tattoo I got for $20 at like a flash tat special. But even that doesn't feel, that feels like they're trying to make it unintellectual. Like, no, it has to be genuinely unintellectual, which is a hard thing to pull off.
Yeah.
But I think I could just be valorizing unintellectualism there.
Yeah. I mean, you did say that like this idea, like you wish there was a word for it where like something or someone's doing something that they're trying to signal has more meaning than it does. Yeah. And I came up with a idea. I don't think it's the best one, but it's a portmanteau of astroturfing. It's deep turfing when you're trying to like, or you're trying to convince yourself or others that like something is deep initially, so then it gains meaning over time.
I think more the thing I'm fascinated about is taking something that is supposed to be purely aesthetic. Like I got a tattoo of a like dragon because it looks cool. Yeah. And then taking something that's supposed to be that and then shoehorning personal meaning into it about your individuality. Yeah. And signaling that. I think that's, I don't know, you can talk about like if people always say like from the 70s onwards, people have talked about like the me generation. People are like less communally minded and more egocentric than they were in the past. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I guess I like things that are more purely aesthetic.
Yeah. I personally, I'm not as like critical of tattoos. I think they're okay. I think that people with tattoos think about them more than I do, obviously. I think they think I am not of the same tribe in that sense, just mentally. But yeah, like as a clean cut person, I think they think about meeting me as a tattoo-less person more than, you know.
I think I've felt that too. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. People always think like, oh, why don't you have a tattoo? It's some kind of like, they kind of read into that. I think it's mostly because I'm indecisive before anything else.
And then you wrote a little bit about Star of David necklaces.
Yeah. That's, I don't know when they really started. I think it's one of those things that we probably stole it from Christians. Jews don't like to admit this, but a lot of what we do is we always think that we're like the original strain of the Abrahamic faith, which is, I mean, true. Yeah. But we've incorporated like stuff from other things. Like I learned recently. So like if you go to a synagogue, like the setup is very similar to a church where, you know, the rabbi is facing the congregation. Yeah. We only started doing that after the Christians do that. The rabbi is supposed to be standing in the congregation facing forward towards the bima and the ark. And I think in like true Orthodox things, they probably still do it that way. But even very like observant Jews, like I don't think realize that we've like taken that from the Christians. And I'm sure the Star of David necklace is that same thing where Christians did it first. But yeah, and the real name for the Star of David is the Magen David. Ever heard that? But
I've never heard that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think if I was ever going to wear one, I got dissuaded from it by like one sermon my rabbi gave, where he was just like that people don't want to put in the hard work of like observancy and like building a Jewish life. They instead want to go to a store and purchase like something that they can wear. Which is kind of what we were talking about earlier, that it's just like we want to buy things that signal stuff instead of like anything that takes work or limiting our lives in any way. Yeah. I don't really think I'm like Jewish enough to wear a Star of David necklace to justify it.
I was trying to think about it with this week's episode. I was like, have I ever seen him wear one? I felt like I did early on, but like I was like, no, he has not worn it recently at all, if he does. So you don't even own one, I guess.
Yeah. And I like in the summer, I like unbuttoning like a dress shirt. And then I just feel like that combined with the Star of David is just a lot to ask of people to look at. So that's enough for me.
Another thing on gold chains that is really interesting. So there's this meme that's been circulating about how there seems to be a connection between gold chains and being uncut. Maybe I'll put it in the show notes.
This is such a wild, like, I don't know, like, should someone study this? Is this a worthwhile effort? Is this?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I have too much to add on this, but I'm just trying to think of the cultural things that could overlap that. I'll let you take the lead on this one.
No, this is going to become too much generalizing. I just think it's funny. And I mean, when I've seen that meme on social media, it circulated quite a lot.
I like harmless stereotypes, you know, that are just like, when someone does X, they probably do Y as well. And it's like not tied to anyone's ethnic background or religion or anything. Like, it's just totally independent. People who do this, do that.
Yeah.
It feels safe. It feels like the final thing we're allowed to do.
So other simple necklaces I like that aren't red flags are like 90s puka shell necklaces, and then also ball chain necklaces, also from the 90s.
I had to look up what a ball chain is, but that's just what's on dog tags, right?
Yeah, but they can be larger. Like if it's a dog tag necklace, the balls are going to be like
really
functional and small, but they can be much larger. But yeah, both of these, I really like them. I think that puka shells are fine because they convey like a simple single meaning. Like, I like surfing, I like the ocean. That's fine. But yeah, it's when someone has a necklace where if you ask about it, they want to tell you about this very specific time in their life. And yeah, that's where it gets like cringe and it becomes a red flag.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I don't know, I think that I'm wearing usually like one ring during the week, and then on the weekends I might wear like 2 rings. It just feels flashy.
Yeah.
To wear more than one ring on a construction site. That just feels like a bit much. I think it could be seen as a red flag, definitely, that I'm a guy who accessorizes. It's probably coupled with other narcissistic traits.
No, I think it's fine that you only wear a few pieces of jewelry. It's like, but when someone's wearing like 10 rings, like Johnny Depp wearing 10 rings.
Yeah, I really associate that. Like he walked so you boys could run, basically.
Yeah.
That look. And I've seen that style of look like adjacent to the menswear stuff I read of like guys who wear kind of like traditional Ivy League clothing. There's this other world of guys who wear like Southwestern jewelry and like hats and cowboy boots. They'll do like a Western rock and roll type of look, and that's where the ring counts really shoot up. And it just, there'll be like a skull one. And when I like every so often I look on eBay for like vintage rings and stuff, and just the size, like the physical size of rings out there, you can just tell is like, this is not the vibe I want to convey. It's very like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of another celebrity outside of Johnny Depp who's wearing these like ostentatious, like big rings. I don't know.
I don't think it's typical.
Walton Goggins, that guy, I feel like I could picture him wearing like loud Southwestern jewelry. I don't know.
I mean, Elton John, I think, wears a lot of rings.
Oh, that's different. He's gay.
Okay. Yeah. But no, I feel like it's more typical for like, I've seen more like straight guys where I'm like, why are you wearing like 5 rings?
Yeah. And like, maybe I have a little bit of, I don't really have that much meaning behind the stuff I wear. I just like that they're shiny and pretty. Like that is the reason.
They're scintillating.
Yeah. I'm a little covetous. I'll say I'm a little materialistic and covetous. I like shiny things.
Yeah.
And I'm allowed to.
Yeah. Just because this episode's on jewelry, I'm going to bring up fun facts from my life, as I often do. Okay. So, I have a long history with jewelry. I mean, I think of my time I spent interning for Sky Kubaku, who's the person I interviewed on episode 15 about chainmail. I kind of consider that to be like a jewelry internship in a way. Chainmail is like jewelry-esque. But I did work for like a proper jewelry company. And I have this like skill set in 3D printing. And like oftentimes when I would do 3D printing projects, it would be like through jewelry. And I worked for this company no, I won't say the name. I don't want to get in trouble. But it was run by this really like bizarre woman who was born in Zimbabwe and she's white. She's one of like 40,000 white people in Zimbabwe. And then she did her like BA in South Africa. And then I think she lived in Australia for a bit. Then she moved to the US. She married some guy who went to Harvard and divorced him. And then she started a jewelry company. But she was just like out of her mind. Like she was just like constantly like she had this like wiener dog that she loved, but then she sent the dog away to New York and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd be like
sending a dog away is You just sound like I can't be close to you right now. I need you. There's too much going on.
But yeah, it would be like I'd be like working for her like with like $1,000 rings and stuff, and I'd be like getting these like shipments from like India that were made in these like horrible like slum factories, and it was just so like colonial. I felt like just her life and her work in the jewelry trade. It just felt like colonial.
You just feel like as a white person in Zimbabwe, you should feel a little bit bad all the time. And then your life should be, just trying to not bring it up. But she was doubling down on it. Like, all right, I already know how to extract more resources from there. Like,
no, like the jewelry company, the bio would be like, yeah, I was raised in Africa, and the pictures were of her in a safari.
God, it's like unapologetically just like pith helmet type colonialism. Like, so my family on the Jewish side, like when we fled Europe, we were in Rhodesia briefly. So eventually Zimbabwe, but I'm like ashamed of it.
Yeah.
Like I have a good amount of guilt. We were, I guess my great grandfather was an ostrich feather salesman. Wow. That was his job. That was like on the Ellis Island paperwork. But yeah, that's like, I guess my cope with that is like, hey, we fled anti-Semitism. We were going to go anywhere, and we just ended up in this terrible exploitive colony. But then we left pretty like quickly thereafter as well.
Yeah. But yeah, this woman I worked for, I eventually got fired by her.
Damn.
And then I got rehired a week later. Yeah. But I ended up quitting eventually just because I was doing a lot of like repetitive motions with my wrist with like jewelry assembly, attaching pendants to chains. And I don't want to get carpal tunnel for this lady. I'm sorry. Like, if I'm going to get carpal tunnel, it's going to be for my own art. So that's why I quit. But then after that was done, when I finished college, I actually started my own jewelry company. This is something I like to omit from my life story. But now, like hundreds of listeners are not going to know about this. Okay, so I owned an LLC. It was a jewelry company called Solar Symbols. What I was doing was like, I was creating 3D models, outsourcing the models to a company in the Netherlands or Belgium, I think. And then they were sending back these 3D printed steel jewelry pieces. They were created through a process called binder jetting. And then I was getting them back, sandblasting them, powder coating them, then assembling them, and then trying to sell them. And I set up an LLC. I worked with an accountant. I had an LLC for 3 years. But I feel so embarrassed because it was like sort of the biggest failure in my life. Because I put all this work into creating this company. It was supposed to be like the big thing I did after college. But then I had the foot sprain that caused like the biomechanical problems I have. And I just didn't want to do desk work. And I also just felt like embarrassed that like I was creating these objects that were functionless. And it just felt like such a sham to have a company that did not provide a legitimate service. So that was my problem with it.
No, I think it's like, I don't know, not to overly like valorize it or lionize it, but no, I think it's an admirable thing to like venture out on your own. I think there's like an inherent value in that. I'm sure you learned a lot from it, but it's also like, yeah, it's pretty like, I can understand the kind of shame of like venturing out. I'm sure you told people like, hey, I'm starting a new business. Like you really put yourself out there, and you also open yourself up to like a fair amount of humiliation. Yeah. No, I respect it because I've never started my own business like that. I've always worked for other people.
Well, we're sort of about to, so this might be an okay time to hint at this. Just so this next week will be 2 weeks from now. We'll be sharing that we're starting a Patreon. But we're going to get to that in 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's the natural life cycle of a podcast. I'm sure people expected it. It's just how it's got to be. It's how
I was not looking forward to this though, just because like my taxes have always been so complex. Another thing I haven't mentioned before is like I met this guy once who got me into crypto. I actually made a fair amount of money, but I don't believe in cryptocurrency at all now. I think it's a failed populist project. Do not get into it. But yeah, that and owning a company and like having 3 or 4 jobs in a year and having investments and other things. Yeah, that's my taxes are incredibly complex.
Yeah, wow.
I am not looking forward to having to like have a company again, but I'll do it, of course. I love this podcast.
Wait, we're gonna make an LLC? Do we have to?
We might have to eventually. I don't really know how it works. I think
SG LLC.
Yeah, but we're still. Anyways, the Patreon is coming. Yeah. But yeah, I did get fired from this random job, but it did help me get my library job. And I still teach. When I teach at the Art Foundation, I do teach like one of the classes I've taught is on jewelry, like 3D printed jewelry. So it's still like a skill I have that I don't use.
Yeah.
And at the library, I'd still do 3D printing. So yeah.
So this is your origin story, because you had said in the past about being skeptical of small business owners. This is your villain origin story of working for that lady.
No, I think it's my like skepticism of small business owners is because of my interest in politics. Because like in Chicago, we do have interesting politics. There's a lot to know about, but every single alderman, they're just so like slimy. They're just like small business owners who want to get another 200K on top of the profitable businesses they already have. And like, it just seems so, it just frustrates me. It's like, I really wish we had like other professions represented in government, not like the people who have already grasped and taken from society, you know?
That's actually, I kind of do find that. I find business owners a little refreshing as opposed to just lawyers and business executives. Like I follow like Chicago, like, I don't know. I like when the rich people are not just finance or business, you know, like I was like, oh, I made my money by operating restaurants or something. I think that's a little, at least interesting. And just like, I work for a hedge fund. Yeah.
I just want like, I honestly want just like regular working class people in an office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a guy. Yeah. I don't know. I always talk about like, I think I valorize, small business owners. But just thinking about like, so my mom makes jewelry actually too. And she's like, she had a company and then, I don't know, she's probably like spun it down a little bit, but it takes up a lot of space. Like at least the way she was doing jewelry, like she would make kind of like Southwestern stuff with turquoise. And then she'd do like wire work, a lot of like trade beads, African trade beads. We go to bead stores. I get really bummed, but just on the small business or big business thing, like my mom worked for a small business owner who was also insane and got sent to prison for fraud, and then she just like she left prison and like just did more fraud because she'd made a network basically in prison of other people who had done similar stuff. But I forget what her name was, but there's like a few articles about her out there. She's probably just like the most famous fraudster out of Lake Geneva, I'd say. And then my mom worked for like some giant faceless company, and they fed her like 3 square meals a day and like helped her when she went back through her bachelor's. And it's where she met the first Jewish person in her life. And then, which opened the door to when she met my dad. She was okay with Jewish people. And so she has like wonderful experiences with like these faceless gray corporations, then terrible times with the sweet business owner.
Yeah.
And then gold versus silver.
You know, I prefer gold. I think there's like a certain like, there's like a goldness to my like skin tone to a degree. I do feel like there's like a bit of yellow or something, but yeah, I do think that like gold makes me happier, like silver. Just thinking if like I was wearing silver, just surrounded by silver, it just does feel cold. Like gold has a warmth to it that I think I gravitate towards.
Yeah. Yeah. Silver can definitely be like severe.
Yeah.
I think that's why like the first stuff I bought was silvery. I thought it was a good like compliment to like having blonde hair. But now I don't know, in my whole, as I mentioned earlier, I'm like spiraling into buying gold stuff. I think it's nice for the summer. I went on a date with a girl who like said that on the first day of spring, she like cycled all of her silver jewelry out and went gold for the summer.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like spring cleaning. I like other kind of like Labor Day and Memorial Day. Like I like these, just put a pin on it of like, we are now in a new season. Cause it's, I mean, they're never really that firm in real life, but it's fun to pretend that they are. You just got to pick.
Yeah. I mean, the ways in which we still have like attachments to the seasons are just through consumerism and consumer habits. So, you know, changing how you look, things like that. And the occasional holiday.
Yeah. Like I don't know. I kind of like the like don't wear white after Labor Day thing. I don't really follow it, but I think it's a fun idea.
Yeah. And then you mentioned color theory too. So I don't know about color theory, but I don't really want to think about it because I get overwhelmed by rainbows when I'm presented with like a full spectrum of color and like every available possibility. It's overwhelming to me as an artist. I need to like limit the color scheme. It just a rainbow is so detached from like reality. I need to think about like earth tones, I think. Yeah. I
think I have like I try and keep to a pretty limited palette. Like I like navy blue, forest green, burgundy. I like the darker version of each color. It's just easier to work in. Like, and there's just colors I just will not wear. I'm never going to wear orange or anything. So it's just nice to take that off the table. It makes decisions a little easier. But rainbow stressing out is just funny to me. That's just you continually to like, I don't know, buck the trend of what you think from gay guys. You have like a physical aversion to rainbows.
No, if for example, I'm much more of a sculptor, but whenever I do try to make 2D work and say I was trying to use like colored pencils or something, looking at them, I can't.
Yeah, it's too many choices.
Even if I have like an image in my head, it just like, it's too much possibility.
Yeah, I like to think about shapes first, definitely. We were talking about like paper cutting and collaging and stuff, and like collaging is stressful because it's just like it already has colors and shapes on it, and then you need to cut that into a new shape. Like it's a hat on a hat. It just sounds stressful. No,
I think it's fun, but have I ever told you how I listened to an interview where someone interviewed Rachel Dolezal about her art making practice?
Yes. So people like might not connect the name, but Rachel Dolezal was the white woman who was like active in her local NAACP and was revealed to be not black at all. Very tan.
Yeah, I heard this like interview where someone was asking her about her art, and she was like, "Collage is my way to like go crazy. Like it's so out of the box."
As opposed to every other part of her life, which is fully insane. But this is where she really gets to let loose.
Yeah. Wait, you're more of a silver person, right?
I don't know. I think I'm going for gold now. I always thought it was ostentatious. Oh, but on difficulty of choosing colors, I was reading this interview with this architect, and he says that what he always does, it's very hard for people to choose colors. And so he would give clients 3 or 4 options, and one of them would be very bad.
Yeah.
Is the idea. Because someone will then say like, oh, well, we don't want that one. And that builds some confidence in the client, because the client doesn't really have confidence in their ability. Like they're seated across from an architect, someone whose job it is to pick colors. Yeah. But the client is nervous. Like, I don't really know how to pick colors. But once they say no to something, then they're starting to like build an aesthetic preference just in that meeting. And so this architect, this is for a hotel in like Skokie, Lincolnwood or so. And one of the options for the brick color was this hideous like purple, like a grimace colored purple.
Yeah.
And he put that out there, and that was supposed to be like the red herring basically.
Yeah.
And the clients picked that and wouldn't hear anything else. They just thought it was the best thing in the world. And so there's this purple hotel on like the far north side of Chicago for a long time, and it was like a landmark to people. And they tore it down recently. But I just love that. I just love the confidence. Like that's the color, purple.
Yeah, I have been told actually by a designer, because I designed a Christmas card in high school mm-hmm. as part of this like program for youth, and in the process, my teachers were designers, and one of them, he told us that like when you're working with clients, they're always going to pick the one that you like the least, and that did happen with me because I had made prototypes. Like one of the ones I made for the Christmas card, it was a really cool idea. It was like the Chicago L map, but flipped and then deposited to look like a snowflake.
Oh, that's really cool.
That'd be really cool, right?
Yeah.
It's a very recognizable symbol to Chicagoans. But and so they went with this print that was like this like sort of psychedelic reindeer. I didn't like it, and that's what they went with.
I remember my sister complaining to me about her sorority back when she was in college, where they were deciding on the Christmas or the holiday card to send everyone. Yeah. And she was like the one Jewish girl. And they had talked about doing like a non-denominational one, and then I guess the decision was made, and the one that went out was like, it wasn't like Santa, but it was like reindeer.
Yeah.
And my sister was campaigning for like snowman or something, and she was just complaining to me about this, and I was like, this is why people don't like us. Jews. I was just feeling very like flip, I guess, in the moment, and I was just like, this is why people think we whine. Because we whine. We do stuff like this. Like just be whatever. Like I don't know, but maybe I'm too accommodating on that. Like I've started saying Merry Christmas to people. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Wow, you're so alt, Joseph.
I guess so. Maybe that's my contrarian streak.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on male jewelry?
Yeah, my recommendation is treat yourself. Get a little bit of jewelry. Don't go crazy with it. It'd be cool to, I don't know. When we were hanging out with friends yesterday, like I'd say a good chunk of the guys were wearing watches and had opinions on watches. We kind of got like, I'd say 3 or 4 watch guys together.
I tried asking them, and they were like sort of unenthusiastic, and they didn't have like a lot to say about their watches.
Oh, I did. I love the one I was wearing.
Well, yeah, but I already am getting your opinion today. I was trying to get theirs.
Yeah,
you know,
you'll get my opinions all the time.
Yeah, But yeah, I actually have something I kind of forgot to say. But yeah, in the process of working for this jeweler, she had her office for a little bit, which was also the production studio in a building on Jewelers Row, 5 South Wabash.
Cool.
It's a very interesting building. You are allowed to go into it as like an everyday person because they have shops, but there's a high level of security. And Jewelers Row itself, I mean, Wabash Avenue, which it's on, it's part of the Chicago Loop where the L is elevated going through downtown, and it's very noisy. So like it's very well preserved. There's not many like buildings that aren't 100 years old along Wabash. And yeah, the jewelers buildings in Chicago, along with most other cities, seem to be like old. Like the jewelry districts seem to really survive through urban renewal or like downturns, because like it's a store of wealth and it seems to just outlast other things.
Yeah, they're like strangely resilient. And it's also one of the few forms of like non-first floor commercial retail space that has survived as well. It's a very like understood thing that you like go into a jeweler's like building in Chicago or New York and you go like up to the second or third floor and you go into like what would be an office usually. Yeah. And it's like a store, like with salespeople and everything. It's something that people are like, for stuff like this, they're willing to go that extra mile, or like usually in any other field, convenience is king. And it's just like, I just want to walk in and be in the store.
Yeah. It's part of the experience. But yeah, the jewelry industry, it's sort of old school and white collar, not white collar, blue collar in a way, where there's like trade secrets and, you know, it's like they're very distrusting of each other. It's like almost guild-like. Jewelers love to critique each other's work. When they see like, because honestly, I don't even know this because I never learned this skill, but gemstone cutting and gemstone setting are they're just such highly intricate skills. Like it's so difficult to set a stone. I am really impressed with those people. Yeah. But yeah, they love to critique each other's work. Like when you bring a ring that you bought at one place and you bring it to another for repair, you'd be like, what the heck? This guy did such a bad... They'd love to talk like that.
I love that. It's like trades guys too, of just like, they call that, like that's not even coped correctly. That's,
But yeah, I never quite got the profile of the type of person that works in the jewelry industry, because
I don't even know if it's Jewish anymore. I think we might have gotten out of it.
No,
I think there's like famous celebrity Jewish jewelers, like especially like to rappers and stuff. Like there's been that kind of thing. I mean, Uncut Gems isn't that movie like focusing on the whole like Jewish jeweler thing?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak to having worked for the white Zimbabwe.
My sample size is that white Zimbabweans are overrepresented.
Yeah, the white Zimbabwean jewelry industry, because I'm sure there's tons. But yeah, no, the company I worked for, this was, mid-college. I was lucky to get this job. I really was, because I didn't quite...
you had no background in it.
I didn't quite meet the qualifications because I was in school still. Oh, yeah. But I got this job while I was still in college. And it was at this time when like Millennial Peak was sort of at its peak. And like, she loved working with rose gold. She loved like rainbow moonstone, like these really like, there was a certain aesthetic that like I would have never really become aware of if I didn't work for her. Like this sort of like just like the obsession with like white that you saw from the Kardashians, but mixed with this sort of like girlishness. But it was at this time when like preppy culture was becoming alternative. Like millennial pink, I think, was a lot of that, like is what, that was the transition, I think, for a lot of preppy people into the altification that we see now.
Interesting.
It was, it's like pink was what lured them in, I think.
I think in jewelry now, like, I think the clean girl reigns supreme. That aesthetic. Yeah. Like, one of my rings I have is from Mian Sai, which has like men's and women's jewelry. And broadly, it's a lot of very like fine, small, delicate stuff. I think that's been in. Like, I don't know. I'm sure there's people who could like talk volumes about the actual trends in jewelry. But yeah, if that was supreme, like the millennial kind of style there, then like Gen Z is going for like the tight hair bun back and then very, very fine, small box chain jewelry. I don't know, which is like, I get it. Like with smaller stuff, you can get better materials too. Like I bought a solid gold chain for another ex of mine. I've really just thrown money away on fineries, but yeah.
I mean, you know what I think could be part of what's going on is that jewelry, particularly what was worn on red carpets and for celebrities, it needed to be on the bigger side because that's what photographed bigger from a distance, or that's what photographed better from a distance. But then with selfies now, you can take pictures that are more up close and intimate and share that jewelry, and it looks appropriate to the scale of the photo. So I think that's why.
Yeah. But
yeah, I hope you guys find, guys specifically, this was men's jewelry. I hope you guys find some jewelry to wear. But yeah, just keep it simple, I guess. But yeah, I think we did go a little bit negative. I hope you don't walk away from this episode thinking you shouldn't be wearing jewelry and people are just going to judge the heck out of you like we just did. So yeah.
But yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.